He never imagined that following the faint sound of a child crying would lead him into the darkest corner of the city. But when millionaire Ethan Cole stepped into that abandoned dump yard and saw his maid clutching a melted ice cream flavor to her chest while her son trembled beside her, he realized he was walking straight into a truth so heavy it could shatter any heart. Before we dive into this emotional and powerful story, make sure you subscribe because stories like this one will change the way you see people forever. Ethan Cole had always lived at the top, a penthouse overlooking the skyline, a line of business ventures that almost ran themselves, and a reputation for being the kind of man who could walk into any room and flip the whole atmosphere simply because of who he was. People talked about his success, but they didn't know that his life had been shaped by loneliness that money never cured. That was one reason he never treated his employees like tools, particularly Rosa, his maid. Rosa had been working in his house for nearly a year. She was quiet, respectful, and always did her job with such focus that Ethan often wondered what battles she must be carrying in her heart. He noticed things. He saw the way her eyes drifted toward the window when she thought no one was watching. He saw the bruised tiredness in her movements. And most of all, he noticed the way she always declined advances in pay, refusing bonuses and insisting everything was fine. But everything was not fine. And he found out in the most unexpected way. The event that changed everything began on a Thursday morning, the kind that looks ordinary on the surface but holds a storm underneath. Rosa had not come to work, no call, no text, nothing. This unsettled Ethan. She had never missed a day, not even when she walked in soaked from rain or coughing from a flu she insisted was nothing. Hours passed, and when the afternoon hit, something nudged Ethan's instincts. He tried calling her again, still no answer. So he decided to check the address she had listed in the employment file. The address led him to a worn-down neighborhood, the kind locals called Forgotten Land, because no one with power seemed to care about what happened there. But when he arrived, the house was empty, abandoned. The neighbors peeked through windows, suspicious of a clean-suited man driving a luxury car through their street. Finally, one elderly woman stepped outside and told him that Rosa had been evicted 3 days ago. She and her little boy Matteo had left carrying just 2 bags, and nobody knew where they went. Ethan's heart dropped. He couldn't drive away. Something in him refused to let the story end there. So he stayed in the neighborhood asking questions, going street by street, even searching alleys. Hours passed. Then, at the edge of the roughest block, a faint cry echoed from behind a chain-link fence. It was small, weak, a child's cry. Ethan walked toward the sound, pushing aside old cardboard pieces leaning against the fence. The cry grew louder. Behind the fence was the old city dump, a place people avoided even in daylight. But he climbed through anyway. The smell hit him first. Damp trash, rotting leftovers, the kind of stench that made your throat close. But Ethan kept going, driven by something he couldn't name. And then he saw them. Rosa was sitting on an overturned bucket near a pile of rusted metal and broken furniture. Her clothes were dirty, her hair tangled, and her hands were wrapped around a half-melted cup of ice cream, the kind you'd get from a cheap corner store. The cup was dripping through her fingers as if she had been holding it for a long time, unable to move. Beside her, little Matteo sat clutching his knees, shivering even though the day was warm. When Ethan approached, Rosa's head snapped up and her eyes widened in pure shock. She looked like someone caught between relief and terror. Ethan froze for a moment, taking in the heartbreaking scene. He recognized the cup immediately. Matteo loved ice cream. Every Friday on her lunch break, Rosa would stop at the small store near Ethan's house and bring home a cup of the boy's favorite flavor, Choco Swirl. But the one in her hand was completely melted, barely recognizable, its sweetness long gone. Ethan stepped closer and said her name softly. Rosa flinched. Matteo hid behind her. She whispered that they had nowhere else to go. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked as if every word wounded her. Ethan told her they would go home with him right now, but Rosa shook her head fiercely. She said they couldn't, not after what happened. That single sentence hit him like a punch. What happened? Rosa hesitated, gripping the melted cup tighter as if it was an anchor keeping her sane. The way she stared at that flavor, long gone, dripping away, showed Ethan this wasn't just ice cream. It meant something, something deep, something terrifying. Finally she began to speak. She said she had been receiving threats for months, first small ones, then bigger ones, all because of a man she once escaped from. A man who believed Rosa belonged to him because he had helped her years ago, a twisted belief he carried like ownership. She had run from him, changed cities, found work with Ethan, thinking she was finally free. But the man found her again. And when he couldn't reach her, he took revenge another way. By getting the landlord to throw her out, he left a message in her old apartment, written in a child's handwriting as if mocking Mateo. The message said she would return to him eventually because she had nowhere else to go. The melted ice cream Mateo had been holding was the last thing she could give him before everything collapsed. She said she let it melt because she didn't have the strength to pretend anymore. Her son deserved sweetness, but all she could offer was fear. Ethan felt heat rise inside him, not anger, something far more dangerous, a promise. He told Rosa she was safe, but Rosa refused. She said she couldn't drag him into danger. Ethan told her that he didn't care. Then Mateo tugged his shirt and whispered something that broke Ethan open completely. The boys said they lived in the dump because his mom didn't want the bad man to find Ethan too. She said their safety wasn't worth risking Ethan's life. Ethan sank to his knees and hugged the boy. Then he asked both of them to trust him. He took them home, cleaned them up, fed them. But this wasn't the end. It was just beginning. Because the man Rosa feared showed up that night. He didn't knock. He came silently, lurking near the building entrance. Cameras caught him pacing. Ethan called the police, but he didn't rely on them alone. He had resources, investigators, lawyers, and contacts in places the man didn't expect. Within 24 hours, he uncovered everything about the stalker: crimes, records, hidden accounts, victims who never came forward. Ethan gave the evidence to authorities. The man was arrested before sunrise. But the biggest twist came after the arrest. Rosa confessed that the stalker wasn't just a man from her past. He was the reason she left her home country. He had been a trafficker who targeted vulnerable women. Rosa had escaped with Mateo as a baby. She had lived in fear ever since. And she thought she could protect her son by staying invisible. Ethan realized the melted ice cream symbol wasn't just about poverty. It was about a mother desperately trying to give her child a moment of sweetness in a world determined to strip it away. When Ethan learned this truth, something changed in him. He didn't just want to save them. He wanted to rebuild them. He helped Rosa get legal protection, a safe home, and counseling. Mateo started school. Slowly the fear faded, replaced by trust, and the biggest surprise came months later when Rosa brought Ethan a cup of ice cream. Not melted, perfectly scooped. She said she was finally ready to stop living in fear and start living in warmth again. The flavor was Choco Swirl, the same one from the dump. When Mateo thanked Ethan and called him family, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in decades. He felt whole. And the truth that shattered him wasn't the danger Rosa had been in. It was realizing how many people live invisible, unnoticed, fighting battles alone. He told himself he would never let that happen again. And from that day on, he wasn't just a millionaire. He became a protector, a guide, a safe harbor for those whose sweetness had melted away from life's cruelty. Because sometimes the flavor people hold is not just ice cream. It's hope, and hope deserves to be restored. Before we wrap up, tell me in the comments from which part of the country are you watching this video.